My parents refused to pay a single dollar for my college and told me to stay and work at the family cafe. So I left and built my own life. Years later, they demanded $135,000 for my sister's wedding, and I gave them the exact answer they once gave me. Hey Reddit, I grew up as the backup kid in a family that only invested in my sister. So I kept my head down, built my own life from scratch, and finally got out. But just when I thought I was free, they came back with their hands out. Before we get into the mess, let me rewind to where it all started. Name's Calvin Ward. I'm 26 now, working in financial analysis at a firm in North Crest City. But this story doesn't start there. It starts in Willow Hills, the small town where I grew up in a modest two-story house that looked like every other house on our street. My dad, Douglas, ran a neighborhood cafe. My mom, Janet, stayed home most days. And my sister, Lydia, was the family's official pride project. If you grew up with a golden child sibling, you'll understand this next part immediately. Lydia didn't just get praise, she got announcements, achievements, compliments, random moments. They all became events. Meanwhile, I learned early that my job in the family was supporting cast. My dad was the first one to make that clear. He had me doing cafe chores before I could spell half the words on the menu. Heavy boxes, deliveries, cleaning, random repairs he didn't want to do himself. If a pipe was clogged, it was suddenly a good lesson in responsibility. If chairs needed moving, he'd pat my shoulder and tell me I was built for practical work. Funny thing, once a customer tipped me $20 for running an order to their car in the rain. Dad took it, and later I found out he gave it to Lydia as reward money for doing well in school. I was 12. That was the moment I realized effort wasn't the currency in our house. Image was. Mom wasn't loud about it, but she had her own way of drawing lines. She called Lydia brilliant, gifted, our bright one. I was steady, practical, and good with my hands, which is parent code for don't aim too high. She said it in a soft voice, like she was doing me a favor by keeping my expectations in check. Family gatherings followed the same theme. We'd sit in a living room full of relatives, and the conversation would turn into what Lydia accomplished this month. I didn't mind talking. No one asked. After a while, I just stopped trying. I'd sit, listen, and file every comment away. Not because I wanted revenge or anything dramatic. I just learned that paying attention mattered more than complaining. Everyday life had its own small reminders of the ranking system. When a new phone came out, Lydia got it. I'd get her old cracked one with the battery that died in an hour. When she grew out of clothes, they became mine if they were gender neutral enough. If not, Mom picked up clearance stuff from a discount rack and called it good enough for school. None of this made me bitter at the time. Kids don't label things like that. You just live the pattern you're handed. I ate the disrespect quietly because arguing never changed anything. It only made me look dramatic or ungrateful. Two words my dad loved using whenever I pointed out the double standards. So I adjusted. I stopped expecting fairness. I stopped expecting praise. Instead, I watched. When you grow up as the backup kid, you either break or you become observant. I chose observant. I learned to track who invested in me, almost no one, and who invested in Lydia, everyone. I learned which promises were real, my grandparents, and which ones were just noise, my parents. By the time I hit high school, the pattern was so obvious that I didn't take anything personally anymore. Lydia succeeded? Great for her. I just knew none of that translated into help for me. If I wanted something, I figured I'd have to build the path myself. Looking back, that mindset ended up being the best survival tool I had. It didn't make me colder, it made me clearer. I wasn't confused about my place in that house. I wasn't waiting for an apology or a sudden moment where they'd look at me and realize I was worth the same as my sister. Lydia got into Ridgeview University in early spring of my junior year. The moment that envelope hit the mailbox, our house turned into a parade float. Janet called every relative she had ever spoken to. Douglas closed the cafe early so the family could celebrate properly. Apparently that meant Lydia picking the dinner, Lydia picking the dessert, Lydia choosing which photos got posted online with captions like, "So proud of our brilliant girl. We've saved for this since she was born." That line stuck with me. Saved since she was born. Nobody had ever said anything like that about me. Still, I assumed my turn would come. Not fanfare, just fairness. By senior year, my grades were steady. Mostly A's, a few B's, and one club I actually liked. I wasn't a prodigy, but I wasn't dead weight either. I worked the cafe shifts Douglas assigned, handled the heavy stuff without complaining, and kept my head down. Applying to college felt like the next logical step, not a wild leap. One night after dinner, I brought it up. calm, straightforward. Mom, Dad, I've been looking at universities. I want to apply. Janet didn't even pause. She laughed, not unkindly, just dismissively. Calvin, sweetheart, college isn't really your lane. You're more practical. Nothing wrong with that. Douglas nodded like she'd made a profound point. Your sister is academic. You're hands-on. The world needs both. They said it like the roles were assigned at birth and couldn't be changed. I didn't argue. I just clarified. My grades are solid. I can get in. I want to study finance. Douglas rubbed his jaw, like the words annoyed him. Calvin, the cafe is hitting a rough patch. Business is down. We need you here. This family can't afford to lose you right now. This was new. He'd never claimed the cafe was failing before. I waited. He leaned forward. Let's be clear. I need someone reliable. Someone who won't run off. If you stay, I'll put you on payroll full-time. Stable work, room to grow, responsible path. Janet chimed in. It would help all of us, honey. Then Douglas pulled out a folder, an actual folder, and slid it across the table. Inside was a long-term employment agreement with his signature already on it. 5 years. Locked schedule. No attending school out of town. This protects you and protects us, he said. If you sign, at least we know the cafe won't collapse. We raised you better than chasing risky ideas. It was guilt covered with family duty. Responsibility wrapped around a trap. I kept my voice even. I'm willing to help, but I can work part-time while studying. I can come home weekends. I can adjust my hours around classes. Douglas shut that down immediately. Not enough. You'll get distracted. The cafe needs full commitment. All right then. I tried a different angle. I'll do a formal loan agreement, I said. College costs. I'll pay it back with interest. We can put it in writing. I'll sign whatever guarantees you want. Janet didn't hesitate. No borrowing. Our family doesn't take loans on principle. That was the same principle they abandoned whenever Lydia wanted something expensive. I closed the folder, pushed it back, and said nothing else. There was no point. Their decision wasn't about the cafe, and it wasn't about practicality. It was about where they placed value. Lydia was worth investing in. I was worth using. I didn't waste a second argument. Their minds were made up. So was mine. The next afternoon, I took the bus to my grandparents' house, Franklin and Marjorie. I told them everything, not with drama, just straight facts. They listened without interrupting. When I finished, Franklin sat back, breathing slow through his nose, the way he did when he was angry, but didn't want to show it. You want to go to college? He asked. Yes, I said. And you'll work? Study? Handle it yourself? I will. He nodded once. Then you're going. Over the next 2 weeks, Franklin made calls, filled out paperwork, and contacted an old friend who handled real estate. By the 3rd week, he had sold the old country place and the land attached to it. That property had been in our family for generations. He didn't treat it like a tragedy. He treated it like an investment. Me. To be honest, I felt bad about it, but I had already made up my mind that I was going to pay them back every dime they invested in me. When they handed me the deposit slip covering my first year's tuition, I didn't know how to respond. The sale covered my first year's tuition and left a modest reserve in case I needed a bridge later. Franklin just said, do something with it. Make it count. I never forgot that. Departure day came in August. I was 18. The bus to North Crest City left at noon. Franklin and Marjorie drove me to the station with a small box of snacks and a sweater because city weather is unpredictable. They hugged me, told me to call when I arrived, and reminded me they were proud. I looked around once, half expecting Douglas or Janet to appear. They didn't. I boarded anyway. When the bus pulled out, I didn't feel abandoned, just confirmed. I left once. No chasing, no second invitations. North Crest City wasn't glamorous, but it felt bigger than anything I'd known. I moved into student housing near campus and started my investment management major. The classes were dense, the textbooks were expensive, and the professors talked like everyone already owned a portfolio. I didn't. I had a notebook, a calculator, and the pressure of not wasting what Franklin and Marjorie sacrificed. My routine settled fast. Classes in the morning, a part-time shift at a copy shop in the afternoon, and studying until campus security reminded everyone the building was closing. Cheap food, cheap clothes, cheap everything. I kept expenses low because pride kept me from asking Douglas or Janet for a cent. They didn't offer anyway. Silence made the math easy. Breaks came and went. I didn't visit Willow Hills except for short stays with Franklin and Marjorie. They always had a room ready, even after downsizing from the old country property. We'd eat simple meals and talk about classes, not family politics. They never pushed for updates on Douglas or Janet, and I never volunteered any. Distance helped, not dramatic distance, just the quiet kind that grows when people stop showing up for you. College years passed in a cycle of work, study, and progress I could measure. My GPA climbed. I picked up internship hours wherever I could. I learned Excel inside out. I practiced mock interviews with anyone willing to spare time. None of it was glamorous, but it built leverage, slow, steady, real. Graduation hit harder than I expected. I was 22 then. Not emotional, just clear. I'd built it without shortcuts. Franklin and Marjorie came to the ceremony, sat in the front row and clapped like I'd been accepted into NASA. Douglas and Janet didn't come. They didn't call. Not even a generic congratulations. I didn't wait for one. The job hunt after graduation was rough. Companies wanted experience I didn't have, and internships counted only halfway. I sent out applications every morning and checked emails at night. Weeks went by with no replies or boilerplate rejections. I didn't take it personally. It was the market, not a judgment of me. Eventually, a small trading company called Harbor Ridge Capital said they needed someone for entry-level research. They were blunt about it. Low pay, high hours, and boring tasks. I accepted immediately. Boring wasn't a problem. Boring was stable. With the job came my first apartment on Cedar Street. The building wasn't unsafe, just worn down. Peeling paint, slow elevator, neighbors who didn't speak much. I didn't need fancy. I needed my own place, my own keys, and a door that closed. A few months into the job, I got a message from Hollis, a guy I knew from Willow Hills who floated between social circles. Nothing major, just a link to a post Lydia had made. Caption: proud of my brother for graduating. I helped guide him through applications and essays, back when he wasn't sure what he wanted. Guide me? Lydia hadn't even asked what my major was. I read it twice, not because it hurt, but because it was a new development. She wasn't attacking me. She was rewriting history around herself. A small lie, early, but a lie all the same. I didn't comment on it. Didn't call her. Didn't ask for correction. I logged it. Same as everything else. Patterns matter more than posts. About a week later, Lydia texted me directly for the first time in years. Hey, haven't seen you in forever. Come to dinner Friday? Would love to catch up. Where? My place. Casual. Just us and mom and dad. No pressure. That no pressure was the red flag. Lydia's tone was always brightest when she wanted something. I told her I'd come. Friday night, I walked toward her neighborhood, keeping my expectations flat. Not pessimistic, just realistic. Lydia never reached out unless there was a purpose. Maybe she wanted to brag about Ridgeview. Maybe she wanted a photo for social media to match her story. Maybe she wanted something from me. I wasn't going in blind, and I wasn't going in hopeful either. The house came into view. One of those modern builds Willow Hills started adding after people from the city moved in. Lights on, silhouettes inside, conversations already happening without me. Same as childhood. As I walked up the driveway, I could see my reflection in the glass door. Calm, collected, exactly how I wanted to be. I knocked once. Lydia opened the door with a smile too bright to be casual. Calvin, finally, we've missed you. Missed me? Unlikely. But I stepped inside anyway. Inside, the living room lights were bright enough to feel staged, like a realtor was about to walk in with a group of potential buyers. Janet sat on the couch with the kind of posture that made her look permanently ready for a photo. Douglas had a drink in hand, swirling it like he was thinking about something important, even though he probably wasn't. And Bryce, Lydia's fiancé, stood near the dining table dressed like he was hosting a corporate mixer instead of a simple family dinner. Jacket pressed, shirt perfect, cuffs aligned. The man didn't crease. They were already mid-conversation without me. Standard. I wasn't surprised. They had mastered the skill of starting every event like I wasn't part of it. Grab a seat, Lydia said, guiding me toward the table with that bright, overly pleasant smile that meant she was running the show. The smile dropped the second she turned away, but she assumed I didn't notice. The moment I sat, she slid right back into whatever sentence she'd been crafting. So, she said, giving me a polite smile with an edge behind it, you're still at that trading place? Harbor Ridge Capital, I said. Right. Her tone made it sound like a convenience store. Must be cute. Do you get, real clients there? Or is it mostly spreadsheets? Janet laughed in that performative mother tone she reserved only for Lydia. Sweetheart, be nice. I'm sure Calvin's job is stable. Practical work is important. Douglas chimed in without looking up from his plate. If it ever falls through, the cafe's still there. We can always use reliable hands. He smirked like he'd just delivered a headline joke. Backups are valuable, Lydia giggled. Bryce offered a polite smile, the kind people give when they don't want to participate, but want to appear supportive. I stayed quiet, not out of shock. Nothing here was new. I'd heard these lines enough times to predict the rhythm. I just watched, letting them perform without my help. Janet leaned forward, lacing her fingers like she was preparing for a heart-to-heart. Where are you living again? Cedar Street? Yeah, I said. Lydia widened her eyes in exaggerated surprise. Seriously? Isn't that one of those starter neighborhoods? I drove past once. It looked tight, in her mouth, translated directly to beneath us. Douglas nodded as if confirming some official report. Saw on the news that area's not exactly premium? You sure that's where you want to be? No reaction from me. Cedar Street wasn't luxurious, but it was mine. It was paid with my own work, not someone else's. They wouldn't understand that difference. Dinner kept that same rhythm. Tiny jabs disguised as casual conversation. Lydia, now on staff at Ridgeview University, talked about her job, dropping buzzwords and emphasizing responsibility like she expected applause. Every few sentences she glanced at me, checking to see whether I looked impressed. I didn't. Douglas slipped in occasional comments like, steady jobs build character, and some people aren't wired for high-pressure work. Janet asked whether I'd thought about something more stable long-term, which was her coded way of suggesting I should stop aiming upward, so Lydia's shine remained unchallenged. At one point, Lydia started explaining a project she led. It's just so fast-paced. Lots of responsibility. Not everyone can handle that kind of pressure. Janet nodded. Your brother's more suited to reliability. He's always been that way. Douglas chuckled. He'll figure it out eventually. Every comment had a message. Know where you belong. Don't reach past what we decided you're meant for. I collected each one like data points. No heat behind it, just observation. Finally, when the plates were cleared and dessert appeared, I decided I'd heard all I needed to. The script was predictable. The digs were predictable. The dynamic hadn't changed. I pushed my chair back quietly and stood. I'm heading out. Lydia blinked like she hadn't prepared for that line. What? You're leaving already? I've got enough for tonight. Douglas snorted. Always dramatic. I didn't answer. I walked toward the door. Hand on the knob, I heard footsteps behind me. Measured, deliberate. Bryce. Calvin, he said. 1 second. I turned. He stepped into the hallway with the practiced calm of someone accustomed to being listened to. He clasped his hands behind his back like this was a performance review. I just want to keep things clear, he said, voice low, smooth. Tonight wasn't meant to feel strained. I waited. The pause told him to continue. He shifted slightly, shoulders straightening. Lydia's world is structured. High expectations, certain circles, certain image. People around her need to fit that framework. He held my gaze. There was no malice in his tone, just condescension polished until it sounded polite. I respect that you're trying to build something, he added. Truly, but understand she operates on a level that requires alignment. His meaning was sharp. Know your place. I watched him for a beat, letting the silence stretch until he realized I wasn't reacting the way he expected. Noted, I said. Just that. He blinked, expecting pushback, maybe an apology or explanation. He got nothing. I opened the door. The night air was cold and steady, a clean break from the stale, staged warmth behind me. As I stepped out, Bryce called after me, softer this time. Just think about what's best for everyone. I didn't turn around. I walked down the steps, crossed the driveway, and hit the sidewalk with the same calm I'd carried all night. No anger, no sting. Just a quiet confirmation of what I already knew. Their world was built on hierarchy, and they expected me to stay exactly where they had placed me since childhood. They'd made their positions clear, and I wasn't playing that part anymore. Their emotional access ended that night. From then on, I kept contact strictly practical, logistics only, until I closed the door for good. 6 months into the job, I got a call from Talia, my friend from college. She didn't start with small talk. Cal, she said, listen, Maxwell Investment Group is opening an office here. They're hiring. I already put in a word. Maxwell wasn't just another firm. They were the kind of company people in finance talk about, with a mix of envy and fear. Getting in wasn't common. Staying in wasn't easy. When's the posting go live? I asked. It already did. Check your email. Apply tonight. And I didn't waste time. I updated my resume, cleaned it down to essentials, and printed notes from past projects. Then I spent the rest of the week running practice questions, reading reports Maxwell had published, and relearning every technical concept I hadn't touched since college. No drama, just preparation. 2 weeks later, they called me in. The interview wasn't friendly. They tested everything: markets, analysis, risk modeling, real portfolio scenarios. They asked for examples of pressure situations. I kept my answers short, direct, not trying to sound impressive, just factual. When the interview ended, the lead manager nodded once. We'll be in touch. They emailed me 3 days later. Offer extended. Harbor Ridge's office manager looked confused when I turned in my notice. You sure? She asked. It's stable here. I know, I said. That's why I have to go. I had been there about half a year. Maxwell started me as an associate analyst. The base pay jump wasn't dramatic, but the bonus structure was. And the opportunity mattered. My first year there was simple: work, learn, deliver. I stayed late because I wanted to finish what others didn't. Not to impress anyone, just to stack results. When a project needed someone to handle data cleanup at midnight, I took it. When a senior analyst needed a presentation polished before a client meeting, I did it. When nobody wanted to take on a struggling portfolio from a small tech firm, I volunteered. That last one changed things. The account wasn't high profile. The company was mid-sized, local, and had hit rough patches. Their returns were flat, bordering on negative. People saw it as a dead-end project. I saw it as a chance to make something move. For 3 months, I tracked the company's performance, their sector trends, competitor data, and market cycles. I reorganized their asset mix, balanced their risk exposure, and ran simulations until the patterns made sense. When the quarter closed, the portfolio posted a strong return, far above projections. My supervisor called me into his office with the numbers on his screen. This, he said, tapping the report, is exceptional. From there, things shifted. Analysts started asking me for help on their models. Managers pulled me into meetings I wasn't originally listed for. My name made it into the email chains that mattered. Not from charm, just math. Results move people faster than personality. The bonuses started small, then grew. I didn't spend them on anything flashy. I saved. I planned. I treated money like fuel, not decoration. After a year and a half at Maxwell, I had enough saved to do something I'd wanted to do since college. I bought Franklin a car. Not a sports car or anything ridiculous, just a clean, reliable, well-kept sedan with good mileage and safety features. He didn't say much when I handed him the keys. He just nodded once, the way he did when something hit deeper than he wanted to show. Marjorie hugged me so tightly it nearly cracked a rib. Once that was done, I focused on my next move: housing. Maxwell's pay plus bonuses plus controlled spending gave me the leverage for something bigger. I'd never cared about image, but I cared about stability. I cared about having a place nobody could talk down at. So I bought a penthouse in the Heights, the new development in Northcrest City with clean lines, tall windows, and keycard elevators that actually worked. It wasn't about showing off. It was about creating a version of my life that didn't depend on anyone's opinion. Between 2 strong bonus cycles, a pre-construction discount, and a conservative mortgage, the numbers worked. Moving in felt like a finish line and a starting line at the same time. One morning, about a week after I moved, I was heading down to the lobby with a travel mug in hand when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Calvin. I turned. Lydia stood there in the lobby's marble entryway, gym bag over her shoulder. Turns out she'd moved into a lower floor 2 weeks earlier. What are you doing here? She asked. I live here, I said. Her eyes moved from me to the elevator, then to the penthouse button. Here? The Heights? Yeah. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something impressive or cutting, but nothing came out. For the first time I could remember, Lydia had no script prepared. I nodded once. Have a good day. Then I walked past her, calm, no flex, not interested in whatever expression she was trying to form. As the elevator doors closed, I caught a final glimpse of her still standing there, processing. My life wasn't perfect, but it was solid. Solid enough that nobody could talk me down anymore. And I built it that way on purpose. The first sign something was shifting came online. I wasn't following Lydia, but Hollis sent screenshots. A picture of Lydia smiling next to an old photo of us as kids. So proud of my brother Calvin. We always believed in him. Strong family values built his success. Another post the next day. Family support makes all the difference. She timed them perfectly, right as wedding season posts began appearing on her feed. I didn't comment, didn't message her, didn't correct anything. It was obvious what she was doing, laying groundwork for an upcoming ask. People who plan leverage care a lot about public perception before they cash in. I kept scrolling and went back to my day. 2 weeks later, I got a text from Lydia. Mom and Dad want to see your new place. We'll stop by tomorrow? Not a question. A statement. They arrived right on time. Janet stood in the doorway staring at the penthouse ceiling like she'd walked into a museum. Douglas kept nodding to himself as if approving an inspection. I let them in out of courtesy, not connection. Boundaries stayed up. Calvin, Janet said, brushing a countertop with her hand, "This is impressive." Douglas added, "Very impressive. You've done well. Polite, warm, completely out of character." Lydia slipped in behind them with a bright, purposeful smile. "We were actually hoping to talk about something important." There it was. They sat down like they were about to negotiate a merger. Janet started. "As you know, Lydia and Bryce's wedding is coming up. It's a significant event for both families." Douglas nodded. "Their venue, the planner, the arrangements, everything has to match Bryce's family's expectations." Then Lydia delivered the figure like she was reading from a brochure. "The total cost is around $300,000. Mom and Dad agreed to cover half." It sounded outrageous for Willow Hills, but the venue and vendors were in Northcrest City, and Bryce's parents insisted on imported everything. That is how you reach $300,000 in a hurry. Janet jumped in. "Before we knew the final numbers." Douglas sighed. "A bit higher than anticipated." Then Lydia leaned forward. "So we were hoping you could help. Just $150,000. As a loan. We'll pay it back." I didn't say anything for a few seconds. They all waited. Then I asked, "A loan, right? With an agreement?" Douglas nodded. "Of course. And you'll pay it back?" Janet folded her hands. "Naturally." I leaned back. "Interesting, because when I asked for a loan for college, you said our family doesn't borrow money on principle." Silence. Janet blinked. That was different. "It wasn't." Douglas cleared his throat. "We're talking about family reputation here. And I was talking about education." More silence. I kept my voice even. "You have a principle. I'm using it. Same rule." "No." Lydia stared at me like she'd heard the wrong sentence. Janet swallowed hard. "Calvin, be reasonable." "I am." Douglas stood up halfway. "Think of what this means for the family." I cut him off with a small hand gesture. "This conversation is finished. No yelling, no heat, just policy." They left with stiff smiles. Lydia didn't look back. 2 days later, Janet texted me. "Honey, can you send a little help? Just a few thousand. We're short on a bill." "No." "After everything we've done for you?" "Calvin, please." "No." She tried a voice message after that. I didn't play it. A week passed. Then I ran into Douglas at the grocery store. I was carrying a bag of produce when he stepped into my path like he'd been waiting. He didn't greet me. He just raised his voice enough for nearby carts to hear. "I raised you, Calvin. A son takes care of his parents when they need him." People turned to look. Douglas watched me, waiting for me to defend myself or shrink. I didn't do either. "I'm not discussing this here," I said. Then I walked past him. No speed, no anger, just forward. He stayed frozen behind me, caught in the attention he'd tried to weaponize. Later that evening, my phone lit up with Lydia's name. I answered on speaker while reviewing a report. Her voice hit immediately. "What is wrong with you?" "Define wrong," I said. "You embarrassed Mom. You humiliated Dad. They told you about the wedding. You have the money. You're just being petty because of high school stuff." "Incorrect. You could help us. You just don't want to. That's selfish." I didn't reply. She kept going. "Bryce's family expects a standard. We can't just show up looking like we're cheap." I waited. I wanted the core ask to surface. There it was. "You're ruining everything," she snapped. "Good night, Lydia." I hung up. The next morning, she sent an email. A full breakdown of wedding costs. Color-coded. Labeled non-negotiable. I opened it during lunch. The numbers were absurd. $20,000 for themed floral arches, $10,000 for a family photo wall experience, $15,000 for imported table settings, $8,000 for a curated scent environment, $12,000 for custom invitations, and so on. Line after line of inflated nonsense. She added a note at the bottom. "This is why we need you to contribute. These are fixed. Please understand." I read it like a stranger invoice from a company I didn't hire. Then I closed the email. A pressure campaign only works if the target bends. I wasn't bending. I held the line. Calm, straight, final. My rage stayed policy. Sunday dinners with Franklin and Marjorie had become routine. Their smaller house always smelled like roasted vegetables and something cooling on the counter. No tension, no scripts, no sideways comments. Just a meal and two people who meant what they said. That weekend, Marjorie set extra napkins on the table and said, "Your parents called us yesterday." I raised an eyebrow. "What for?" Franklin answered before she could. "Money." Marjorie shook her head. They were talking circles around themselves. "Claiming they're under strain. that they're expected to contribute a large portion for Lydia's wedding, and it would be a tragedy to fall short. Franklin poured water into our glasses. Then your mother suggested we sell the car you bought me. His jaw tightened. Said it was just sitting in our driveway. I blinked once. She said that out loud? She did, Marjorie confirmed. Franklin set the pitcher down with a controlled thud. Told her no. Told her if she brought it up again, the call would end. She brought it up again, so I ended it. That was Franklin in a sentence. Calm until someone crossed a line, and then unmovable. Marjorie sighed. They're desperate for money and approval. They don't care where it comes from. I didn't reply. There wasn't much to say. They'd pushed every angle they had with me. Moving on to my grandparents was predictable. Over the next week, gossip spread around Willow Hills. Small towns don't need accuracy to stay loud. Someone claimed I refused to help the family in a crisis. Someone else said I'd abandoned my parents after becoming rich. Apparently, I'd even cut Lydia out of my life because I was jealous. None of it was surprising. I didn't defend myself. I didn't call anyone. I didn't post long explanations online. Explaining yourself to people who already picked a side is a waste of time. Then Kyle showed up. I ran into him in the parking lot of a hardware store. He started with a smile that didn't fit the situation. Man, everyone's talking about you, he said. Saw your parents the other day. They seemed torn up. I waited. Kyle loved building up to his point. Look, he said, shifting his weight. I get it. You're hurt. But maybe you should see their side. Which side is that? I asked. They raised you, and they're struggling. You're doing well now. You could be the bigger man. You only get one family. I nodded once. Right. He brightened, thinking I agreed. Then I added, nobody told them to be bigger parents. Kyle froze. The sentence landed exactly where it needed to. I stepped around him and kept walking. He didn't follow. 2 days before the wedding, Lydia came to my building. Not the lobby, my door. She knocked lightly, the way people do when they're trying to sound gentle. When I opened the door, she put on a practiced smile. Cal, she said softly. Can we talk? I leaned against the doorframe. Say what you need. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. I don't want us to be like this. We're siblings. We should support each other. There it was. The peace opener. She sat on my couch like it belonged to her. The wedding is important, Cal. Not just for me, for Mom and Dad. They've tried so hard, and they're embarrassed. Bryce's family has expectations. We can't show up looking small. Then she shifted tone, exactly as expected. If you could help, even a portion, it would change everything. You know we'd pay you back. I looked at her calmly. No. She blinked fast. You didn't even think about it. I did. The answer's still no. She stood abruptly. So that's it? You'd rather let your parents look poor? They created the situation. They can handle the outcome. Her voice cracked into anger. You're unbelievable. You act above everyone now. I'm not above anyone. I'm just not available. She stared at me for a long second, waiting for something. An apology. A crack. Anything. I didn't give her one. Goodbye, Lydia, I said. She stormed out. That evening, Talia texted me. Talia, not sure if you care, but FYI, your parents finally told Bryce's family they can't pay their half. Talia, his parents were not happy. They're cutting costs everywhere. Looks like the wedding's getting downgraded hard. She added, you made the right choice. Just thought you should know. The wedding happened that weekend. I wasn't invited. No surprise. Franklin and Marjorie got an invitation but declined. We have plans with our grandson, Franklin told them. Our plans were simple. A long walk, lunch on a patio, and a quiet afternoon watching an old movie on their tiny living room TV. It was more genuine than anything happening across town. 2 days after the wedding, my phone lit up with a message from Janet. Miss you. Come by sometime. No punctuation. No acknowledgement of the last few months. No mention of the money demands, the guilt, the pressure, or the public show at the grocery store. Just a casual reset, like everything had been a misunderstanding, and all I needed to do was play along. I stared at the message for a moment. Not angry, not tempted. Then I locked my phone and went back to my day. No response, no argument, no return. Some people think closure comes from conversations. Mine came from consistency. No contact isn't revenge. It's maintenance. From that last text onward, no contact. They made their choices. I made mine. And I finally had the peace to keep them separate. You've been reading this like a story, but let's make it real for a second. If you were me, if your parents laughed at your goals, refused to help you when you needed them, tried to trap you in a low-ceiling life, mocked your progress, disrespected your work, rewrote your achievements, then only showed up again when there was money involved, What would you honestly do? Would you forgive them? Should I? If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.